Today is November 18th, 2014, and we are interviewing Mr. Charles Hartley at Hinsdale, Illinois. Mr. Hartley was born June 28th, 1928. My name is Cheryl Walker, and I'll be the interviewer. Natalie Koska will be the court reporter for the interview. Mr. Hartley, can you tell us where you were born?
I was born in Elmhurst, Illinois, 2 blocks away from my house.
And what were your parents' names?
Charles J. Hartley and Peggy, my maiden name was Mitchell.
Okay. And what did they do for a living?
My mother was a housekeeper, and my father was the secretary and treasurer of the Elmhurst Chicago Stone Company in Elmhurst, Illinois.
Did you have any siblings?
I had 2 siblings, one older and one younger, both girls. Beverly was the oldest, the youngest was Joyce.
Did they go into the military?
They did not.
What were you doing before you entered the service?
Well, we graduated one side of the stage and inducted in the other side of the stage.
That was fast.
It was very fast. Yes, they did give you 30 days leave though before you had to report for duty. So I'm going to say we graduated on or about the 1st of June. We reported to Chicago Induction Center on July 1st or thereabouts.
Were you drafted or enlisted?
Enlisted.
Enlisted. And what branch of service?
The United States Army.
What war did you serve in?
I served in World War II and Korean War.
What was the highest rank that you achieved?
Technical Corporal, grade 5.
Why did you choose the Army? Or did the Army choose you?
The Army chose me. And the reason for that is because of the fact that I was too small to be a Marine. So that eliminated me right off the bat.
Do you recall your first day of service?
Well, yes. It's kind of a long ways back, but the fact is, yes, we reported to some place in downtown Chicago where we took the oath, and they put us on a train from there, took us up to Fort Sheridan, and that's where we started our inoculations and getting rid of our civilian clothes and sending them home and getting our uniforms.
Where was your boot camp at?
Boot camp was Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. 6 weeks.
Do you possibly remember when you got off the train or the bus or whatever, however you got to Fort Leonard Wood? Do you remember your thoughts?
Well, we got there by train, but the fact of getting off the train, I don't remember that. No. All I know that it was very, very hot there and humid. It was a bad summer, and getting there in July was not what I would call a picnic.
Do you remember your first trainings? What you did?
You mean getting up in the morning, getting up with that type of thing? Yeah, that was an eye opener by itself. Yes, getting up, it was still dark out, falling out, and then marching down. I think marching down for breakfast was really a tough one. It really was.
And why was that?
Well, probably because of the fact that it was warm. You had your dungarees on, and didn't feel comfortable. And going down and eating, and you're eating off of tin trays. That was an eye opener. That meal itself really got to me. Breakfast did, yeah. The rest of the time, the other 2 meals didn't make much difference, but oh my goodness, it was so different for breakfast. I don't know why it was, but it was.
Where did you take your advanced training?
Fort Lewis, Washington, up near, and what a difference in terrain from Fort Leonard Wood to Fort Lewis, because we got there in the fall, early fall, and it started raining, and it rained. We never saw the sun one day after we got there, never, and of course, in the barracks there, one window had to be open on the bottom on this side, the window open on that side. And I happened to have the lower bunk, and I'd get up and look out the window. And those little squares in the screen were always filled with water in the morning. That's how humid it was. And our boots never got dry. You had to change boots every day, but your boots never got dry. Never. Yeah, go on.
What was your advanced training in?
Amphibious landings and construction. One of the things we worked on was bridges and landing strips.
When you say amphibious, what do you mean exactly?
Well, there was the LST. We'd have to load our equipment into the LST, take it out, and rearrange it, then take it and put it back down. And of course, you're slopping around in the mud and the water, and in the rain too. You put on your raincoat the same way as you did your underwear. Yep. And while we were there, they were going to let us come home for Christmas for 1 week. And I asked the captain of our company that if I could charter some airplanes to fly the guys home to Chicago. And he says, if you think you can do it, go ahead. And I did. I hired 2 DC-3s. We flew the guys home. We landed in it's northeast corner of Montana and to refuel, and it was snowing out. And our plane came in first, and the second plane came in. And while he was taxiing over to the fuel depot, the wings hit a hangar, so it decommissioned the aircraft. So they had to bring another airplane in from wherever it was coming from and fly those guys home. So they were a day later than we were.
Were these military planes?
No. They were DC-3s, commercial. Yeah.
You had that many soldiers that wanted to come home.
You know, when you think about it, it wasn't 240 people in the DC-3. I don't know what the capacity was. I think it was 60 or 70, and that was maybe 120 to 150 guys. Yeah.
After you did that, then did you go back to Seattle?
Yes, we did go back to Seattle. And of course, they never have snow in Washington because it's all rain. So as we approached Washington, it was snowing out. And the airport, which was the Boeing plant landing strip where we were going to land, had no capacity for removing snow on the runway. So we had to land on the other side of the mountains, down, I think, Wenatchee, Washington. And then the airlines had to hire buses to get us over the mountains. Well, when you get up in the mountains, what are you going to have? More snow. So we followed a snowplow. So there were 150 guys AOL because of Seattle having snowfall. That was an experience by itself. I never followed a snowplow in my life. It has the big propeller up in front and just throws the snow off into the woods. Don't push it to the side like they do on our highways here. So that was. And how fast did we go? 3 miles an hour.
When you got back to the base, and you being AWOL, what happened to you guys?
The captain was notified that our planes were not being able to land in Seattle. So he was notified ahead of time. And so when we got the buses, he was there welcoming home and glad to have us back because we were going to be departing soon. And glad to have all of us back safe and sound. We didn't lose one guy, and I always thought somebody would jump the ship as long as they got back to Chicago. They wouldn't get back on the airplane. But nobody did. Everybody got back aboard.
When you told us what your job was.
Yes.
Where all did you serve?
Well, we stood standby at Okinawa, and then we went into Tokyo Harbor and docked there and set up a base depot in Yokohama.
And how long were you there, or did you go someplace else?
No, never left there. No, matter of fact, we took a different ship out of Japan to come home, but no, never left Japan.
Mm-hmm. And what all did you do there?
Well, I was fortunate enough to get in headquarters company. I don't know why, but I did. So I got in headquarters company, and we had about 15 companies underneath us. So I was with our lieutenant colonel. I think his lieutenant colonel. I don't remember his first name. His last name was Beers. And when we got there, headquarters company was right next to the building that all the officers were in. So the fact is that we had Kwanzaa huts, and I was digging these out the other day. These are two pictures of our Kwanzaa hut that we lived in for 2 years there. But what we did when we got there, we cleaned up the streets, got the bombed out streetcars, the buses, all put away in fields. And then the Japanese men would actually come during the night and wheel them away and put them. I don't know how they got them out of there, but they did, and they put them on their property so they could live in them, which were bombed out buses and streetcars. So we had a big stink about that.
So they stole those from you.
Well, they belonged to the Japanese government or the city of Yokohama, and they were residents of Yokohama. I would assume they didn't come from Tokyo. But the fact is, when we got there, what we had to do is put the country back together, because there was nothing standing between Yokohama and Tokyo. The only thing was left were I-beams and bases of chimneys. Everything was either bombed or burnt down.
How long did it take you? Or
well, we actually operated, because we had so many companies. We actually worked 24 hours a day. Different shifts, so things could keep on moving. Because water was a big shortage, we had to get that going. We had to get the trains up and running, getting electricity back for the streetcars again. And the streetcars they had left were not enough, so they were actually hanging off the sides of the streetcars that go from point A to point B.
How long were you stationed there?
2 years. 2 years. Yeah.
And how was communication back home?
We had an APO. APO was 503, so you could send mail, but it didn't go by airplane. It went by boat. So near the end, we were getting mail by air.
What do you remember about the weather?
Well, the weather was pretty nice there, but I was in a hurricane. It's the first time I ever saw rain going sideways. And the Kwanzaa huts withstood the hurricanes beautifully. Some of them didn't do as well as we did, because we must have had better Kwanzaa huts. I don't know why I say that, but we didn't get any water in our Kwanzaa hut. And we had winds well excess of 100 miles an hour.
And did they just tell you to go to your Quonset hut, or did they
bunker down?
Bunker down.
Yep, bunker down.
What did you do for recreation on your off time?
Well, being a headquarters company, I was doing all the battalion paperwork, and when Lieutenant Colonel was not going to be using the Jeep, he told me I could use the Jeep. And believe it or not, there were 4 fellas that went into graduated with me and went with me, or I went with them, however you want to put it. And if they had liberty at that time, we'd get the Jeep and go sightseeing. And one of the things I wanted to go see was the submarine base that the Japanese had, which was around Tokyo Bay.
And they let you on that?
Oh, yes. No, we didn't get on submarine. We got on site, yes. But we didn't go on submarine, no.
What medals and citations did you receive?
Well, they just notified me just recently that because of honorably discharged, I got my extra one, another one. So I actually have 9. And I didn't know if you were going to ask me that question or not. Did I write it down? No, I didn't write it down. Well, maybe it is here. No, it's not there. Is it with my paperwork that I gave you before? Is it in the
So
background?
you got the victory medal,
Yes, thank you. You have it.
the good conduct.
Yes. By the way, I told them how I wanted it done, and he said no. The most prestigious one is the good conduct medal. So we start off with that. So I didn't want it there, but that's what they told me. So they gave it to me, my medals, as I served the term. Because you'll notice that I think about the 5th one is Korean service.
Okay, yes.
Okay. Yeah, okay.
Okay, Army of Occupation Japan,
Yes.
South Pacific.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. After you were done with World War I, after the war
Yes.
got over.
No, not World War One. That was my dad.
World War II. I'm sorry.
That's all right. My dad was in World War One.
After World War II, do you remember when the war ended? Where were you?
I think they signed the armistice in August or September. And if it was August, we were still in Fort Leonard Wood. And if it was in September, we were in Fort Lewis. Yes. And I remember when Roosevelt died, too. That was an outstanding day because we had a full dress and stand by the sides of the road while the commander-in-chief.
And where were you then?
Roosevelt, I think we were still in Fort Leonard Wood. Okay. Yeah.
When did you get to take leave?
Well, we got passes but not leaves. The only leave I really got is when they hired the DC-3s to fly us home at Christmas time. That's the only leave I ever had. Yeah. No. Other than that, no.
What did you do for recreation?
Well, I do remember going downtown Yokohama, and I went to a place called, I'm trying to think of his name. He's well known for his pearls, and I bought my mother a set of pearls. So I was shopping, and I bought scarves for my sisters. Didn't buy anything for my dad. I'm trying to think. I'm sorry, I can't. Mickey Moto pearls, and because of being a headquarters company, there's always the same people that always ran out of money, but because we only got paid once a month. So I always knew ahead of time who the pay officer was, and I would notify him that I'd be at the other end of the table where I could collect my money. And I lent money to the guys in all the companies 6 for 5. So when they got paid, and of course the same guys, they'd always pay me because of the fact I was at the end of the table. If I hadn't been in headquarters company, I would have never had that opportunity. So I'll give it to you later. But when I was at the pay table, I was able to collect my money. But the same guys would come back in the middle of the month and borrow money again. So I don't know what they were doing with their money, but anyhow, that was none of my business as long as they paid me. So it was money making.
So you were investing.
Yes, I was. And I gave up smoking cigarettes at that time, too. Because you could sell a carton of cigarettes for 1,500 yen. I have no idea how the translation was, but I'd take my Japanese money to PX, and the officer would change their Japanese money for American money, and then they go put in soldier's deposit. Yes, I did invest it. I did.
You were also in the Korean War.
Yes, I was.
So tell me about that. Where were you stationed?
I was stationed Fort Sheridan, Illinois, and I got in troop movement. My MOS put me in headquarters company again, and so I actually was attached to the United States Post Office, Fort Sheridan, but as a rotation, because the men in the post office all were in troop movement, so we rotate. I would take a train, and then the next 5 days I'd be another train. So that's where I mentioned to you going down to Fort Sill, Oklahoma, that was so hot and steamy at 6:30 in the morning. So yeah, that I moved. So then I'd go to an Air Force base and try to get a lift home on some airport. It's closer to Chicago, and then I'd take a bus or a train to get back.
So were you stationed at Fort Sill, Oklahoma?
No. I just dropped them off and head back home. Yeah. They always gave you a train ticket to come back on, but you could find ways of getting home faster than the train. And then you could turn your ticket in and get money. Because I was married at that time, and my second child, which was a little girl called Anita, she was born in Fort Sheridan. She was born in Great Lakes, Illinois.
Did you were you called back to service?
Yes, I was.
During Korea?
Yes, ma'am.
So
yes, ma'am.
Were you in the National Guard? Were you in the Reserve?
I was in the Reserve. Yes.
And they called you back. Did
Yep.
you ever go overseas?
In the Korean War?
Mm-hmm.
No, I did not. No. Just troop movement, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And as in troop movement, you just, from Fort Sheridan, took them to whatever base they
Yes,
were
ma'am. Yes,
going
ma'am.
to. And what bases did you go to?
Fort Sill, Oklahoma, Fort Riley, the anti-aircraft field artillery places. Never took any of the guys to Washington, Fort Belvoir. They normally were issued, they were given their files, and they were issued airplane tickets, and they flew to Fort Belvoir, Virginia, and places like that. Fort Leonard Wood. I'm going to say Fort Bliss, Texas. We went to Fort. That was field artillery.
What was your highest rank?
Corporal, technical corporal, grade 5.
And what were your service years?
My service years were 5 years, 7 months, 3 days, and 9 hours.
My. Very impressive. So you were in from 45 to 47.
Yes.
And then 50 to 51.
Yes, ma'am. But then your reserve time was put in there too.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Okay. Did you get married in the service?
No, I did not. I got married between the time I got out and the time I was called back in.
Did you meet your wife before you went into the service?
Oh, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am, I did. No, not before I went into service. No, because I graduated. She went to Oak Park River Forest High School, and I went to York High School in Elmhurst. No, I didn't meet. I met her. When I met her, I was working nights at International Harvester. And I'd go to the pool, which was across the street, and lay on the deck and sleep on the deck. And I had a day-glow orange bathing suit. And she was with the young lady from my class. And she says, you know, I'll probably marry a guy like him. She told that to her. So that was her private joke about me. I'll probably marry a guy like him.
When you returned from World War II, how were you treated?
Well, when we came home, we came on a transport ship, and there was a sign on the Golden Gate Bridge, "Welcome home." We got in too late in the afternoon to have a tugboat put us into the dock, so we weighed anchor in San Francisco Harbor. And when we got there, the tide changed at that particular time, and it started moving out. We had general prisoners aboard the boat that we were on, or ship, I should say, not boat, ship. And were down in the chain locker. That's where you put the prisoners, the most secure place of all. They had leg irons on. They had no handcuffs. They would have to come up to the weather deck, go down the weather deck, and to go down in the galley and eat. Well, these two young men decided that this is their opportunity. So the two of them jumped overboard while they're waiting in line to go down to eat. And of course, as soon as they hit the water, they started yelling for help, because the guys in front of back of them didn't say anything. They just shut up and let them go. But they hit the water, and when the water's going out to the Pacific Ocean at that time, that it's 125 miles up into the California. So when that tide goes out, the tide is really, really strong. And so by the time we have our big lights put on, because it was dark, getting dark now, and they're turning the lights on and trying to get a boat out, and of course Alcatraz was off to our starboard side. So I don't know if the operator from the ship we were on notified them we had two men overboard, but anyhow, they had a motor launch there in the water already, and they went over and picked them up. So they got to Alcatraz even before they got off the boat.
And they were, when you say general prisoners,
yes, ma'am.
What do you mean?
They all kinds of rape, robbery, burglary, disrespect to an officer, AOL, constantly. Any military rule you can come up with, it could be an offense and go to a general court-martial. A summary court-martial is a very low court-martial. It's like jaywalking. When you had a general court-martial, you actually had a defense lawyer, where on a summary you were your own defense.
So, getting off the ship and in San Francisco.
Yes.
What did you do?
They put us on buses and took us up to Camp Stoneman, California, which is up farther away. It was still on the water, but the depth was so shallow you couldn't bring ships up there. So you got off at the harbors in San Francisco and put you on buses and bust you up to Camp Stoneman.
And how long were you there?
Oh, well, what happened is that two men on the ship coming back got meningitis and died aboard the ship. So they quarantined the 2 compartments that the men died on. And so they were not processing any of this. They were putting this in, barracks, really. But it was single bunks, no heat. And remember, they're going out into the woods looking for firewood to heat, because there was a burner in the barracks, but no fuel. So we would conjure up paper, wood, and have fire in the place while we're waiting for all these guys to see if anybody else broke down with it. Nobody else did, but so we were there. I think we were there at least 2 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks. We were there. The chow was terrible. There was no heat in the mess hall. But I have to say this, that they probably did not have the cockroaches we had in Fort Leonard Wood, because when you would go for KP early in the morning, 4 in the morning, the floor was red. Turned the lights on and you had regular concrete floor then. Cockroaches. Yep.
Is there anything that you ate in the service that you won't eat now?
Well, we never had sloppy joes in the service, but I don't eat that. No, I won't eat green. Will not eat green hamburger. It's green in the middle. I will not eat dried eggs. I will not have powdered water called milk. It was powdered milk, but I added water to it. It wasn't too bad if it was cold, but warm it just was terrible. Eggs, dry eggs, were terrible, but you ate them because you were hungry. And the best part of all that was bacon. And I hate bacon today, but I ate bacon then because it was something to eat.
Why was the hamburger green?
I have no idea why it was green. And you'd cut it open, it had a green center inside. I have no idea. And you'd eat around it and throw that away. Of course, the military got the patent for having dried potatoes. And I guess you can still get dried potatoes in a box.
Not one of your favorites?
Oh, no, it's not. No. And when they say mashed potatoes, I said, are they mashed potato or instant potatoes? Oh, they're mashed potatoes. Okay, I'll have some of those.
Yeah. Have you remained in contact with any of your fellow veterans?
Yes, I was in contact with a lot of them, because a lot of them, all 4 of them, 3 of them are gone already. So I am very lucky to believe in the age that I am, but they died. The only one that I'm not in real good contact with, maybe once or twice a year, he's down in Missouri. Branson, Missouri. He's down in Branson, Missouri. He's not in town. He's got a bird farm. He raised exotic birds. So he retired from AT&T, and but the other one was a plumber, another one was a welder, another one was a well, I guess he was attached to the Marine military unit, and they did guard duty at facilities that were making armed force paraphernalia. So they never left the States, though. They stayed in the States.
What did you do after the for a living? after the service?
Well, it was a funny thing that I tried being a milkman. I was a milkman for Bowman Dairy. Thank you for asking that question, because I started off with being a milkman there, and we had a bad winter, and I had a milk route all the way out in Wooddale, Itasca, way out west there. In the wintertime, delivering milk there was not pleasant. So spring came, and I said, let's go down to Florida. So we went down to Florida because they had a dairy down in St. Petersburg. So I went to work for him down there, and I worked down there for a year and a half or two, and the split shift was terrible because I'd have to go down early in the morning, load the trucks as they pulled up, and then I have to come back in when they got done with the route at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I worked till all the trucks got in. You got paid by the hour, but the split shift, you could never do anything. And so we decided we would come back home. And I went to work for Ford Motor Company. I worked for Ford Motor Company for 10 years. We originally made reciprocal engines, and then we went to jets. And I was a tool expediter for Ford Motor Company, and I had to make sure that the tooling was available on the line when we changed a procedure in manufacturing. Well, the fact is that we had a situation come up that I did not have the tooling. We stopped production, and I was called on the carpet for it. And I said, I didn't say it was my fault. I said, I have tried to get it out of engineering so I could have it manufactured. I said, well, who did you talk to? And I said, I talked to ABC. And they said, get Mr. ABC here immediately. And they brought him in and says, how often has Mr. Hartley been to see you? And he says, I don't really remember how many times. Well, do you think it was 5 times? Do you think it was 2 times? Do you think it was 10 times? Well, somewhere in there. Yes, why? Well, the production line is now shut down because you're incapacitated of not being able to produce the engineering, so we now have the line as stopped. Now, do you going to want to pay all those people while we send them home because you did not get the engineering done? And he says, no, I don't want to do that. He says, well, how soon can you have the drawings done? And he said, well, I can have it in about 12 hours. He said, well, I don't want you going home tonight before you have that done. I want that paperwork down in the main tool room so it can be manufactured during the night so we can have the line running tomorrow morning. And I said, okay. Well, I went back to my job out on the production line, and I saw my light on. I went in to see my boss. My boss says to me, he says, you never do that. I said, Mr. Bowman, what do you mean by that? You say them or they. And I said, you don't say you went to Mr. ABC? Never. You never point a finger at anybody. Not in a corporation. You'll never get any place with Ford Motor Company that way. So when they were closing the plant down, it was at 79th and Cicero Avenue, they flew us to Detroit, and we went over to Flint, Michigan. Spent the weekend there, looked around the town, came back, and Monday morning the light was on, so I went in to see Mr. Bowman, and Mr. Bowman says, when are you going to take the transfer? I says, you need an answer now? And he said, well, what's wrong with that? I said, well, okay. No. What? You got 10 years with the company already. You're getting a transfer. You get a pay raise. We're going to pay for the move. What in the world are you going to do? I said, I'm going to open a bicycle store. He said, you're going to open a bicycle store? Yeah, because I have 5 kids that need bikes for my kids. He says, now I know you're nuts. And Mr. Bowman was a really a nice man, but he was very upset with me about pointing my fingers at the man in engineering. And I said, if they can't point a finger at the guy that's responsible for it, no, I'm not going to go there. And I still have the bicycle store now. Yeah. My oldest son is running it, but It's still here at Hinsdale.
Is there anything you'd like to add to your interview?
Well, yeah, I was in the VFW for 60 years. And in that 60 years, we never had anything going. Nothing. It just never seemed to get going. And I happened to go to my son-in-law's father's funeral. And the American Legion did a service for him. And as they came out of the room, I thanked each and every one of them for their dedication to the American Legion and to my son-in-law's father. And I came back and I went up to the City Hall here in Hinsdale and said I'd like to become American Legion member. And it's the best thing I think I've done in a long time. Because this town of Hinsdale has been so good to me and my family that anything I can do to help Hinsdale, I've got to do it. Because raising 5 children in this town, which is not an easy town, to be the underdog, that they help the Hinsdale people were so good to me that I just got to pay them back.
Well, at this time, I'd like to thank you.
Well, thank you for having me.
For serving our country.
Well, thank you for that, too.
And I'd also like to take this opportunity and thank you for allowing me to interview you, giving me the opportunity. And I'm sure Natalie Koska would feel the same.